My girlfriend's family badmouthed me in their native language, so I learned it behind their back and destroyed them by speaking my mind in it, by destroying her daughter with perfect Turkish. Before my girlfriend Aisha first brought me to her family's Sunday breakfast, I was terrified of meeting them. She had told me dozens of stories about how traditional they were. One time, her cousin's boyfriend showed up to a holiday dinner without bringing anything, and her aunt still called him empty-handed Mehmet 5 years later. Another time, her friend came over wearing shorts above the knee, and her dad muttered shameless in Turkish under his breath. Luckily, her dad was now out of the picture, but I was still scared because I was a purebred American, and I knew it was a big dream of her family for all the daughters to marry a Turkish man. In the months leading up to meeting them, I spent 2 hours every day in a Turkish setting to learn the culture. Turkish restaurants, grocery stores, and even tea houses. So when the time came, I had practically formed a script in my head of how to act and speak. Aisha, of course, didn't know any of this. I kept it a secret because I didn't want her to think I was crazy. When the day came, I walked in carrying a huge box of fresh baklava from the best Turkish pastry shop, cologne for her brothers, and flowers for her mother. I kissed her mom, Fatma, on both cheeks, starting with the right, just like I'd learned. Removed shoes without being asked, placed them neatly by the door, and responded properly to everyone's greetings. I called her older sister Big Sister, and any older male relatives Big Brother. I knew things were going well when her younger sister Alif kept bringing me tea in those tiny tulip glasses, giggling about how respectful I was. And her mom didn't speak English, but it really seemed like she liked me too. She would smile every time I complimented the food, and complained about these modern kids as if I wasn't American. Now, you're probably wondering how I understood what she was saying. Well, I went behind Aisha's back. While studying Turkish culture, I started taking Turkish lessons. I didn't want to say anything about it because I wanted to surprise her at our engagement. So up until this point, it had been around 6 months of lessons, and I could hear how well Fatma was speaking of me to Aisha's two sisters. Aisha was practically glowing with pride. I had no idea that it was the calm before the storm, because there was just one person who made it abundantly clear that I was an unwanted guest, and that was her older sister, Zeynep. Constantly made snide remarks in English about how I was watering down their bloodline, made jokes about how I was a good warm-up for her future Turkish husband, but I was convinced that I would win her over eventually, and just shrugged it off. But the next time I was over, things had completely changed. When me and Aisha showed up at the door, her mom barely acknowledged me and asked Aisha in Turkish, "Why is the foreigner still around?" Aisha looked just as confused as me, but just rolled her eyes before walking in. We sat down for dinner, and Fatma served fresh meatballs and rice to everyone. Meanwhile, she handed me a plate of completely raw ground meat with raw onions. There was so much that the juice started dripping all over me, and just before I could ask for a napkin, Fatma, Mill, turned to Aisha and said, "This was always Emre's favorite." That's when everything made sense. Emre was her first love from university, and he was Turkish. Her family hadn't accepted me. So there I was, pretending to eat raw meat and trying to make polite small talk, when Zeynep, the older sister, turned to my future mother-in-law and said in Turkish, "Her boyfriend just told me that doner kebab is better in Germany." I froze. My girlfriend opened her mouth to speak, but I lightly pinched her arm under the table because I had to test the waters. "This food is really delicious," I said in English, with a completely straight face. "He says Turkish food gives him diarrhea," Zeynep translated. Fatma's face went completely red, and she started muttering prayers under her breath. The room was silent. I couldn't even hide my smile. "Thank you for having me in your beautiful home," I said. "He said your house smells like a kebab shop and needs renovation," Zeynep lied. My girlfriend was shaking with anger. Fatma was getting ready to throw me out. That's when I looked directly at Fatma and said in perfect Turkish, "Mother Fatma, I've been learning Turkish for 6 months to properly ask for Aisha's hand. Every word your daughter translated was a lie. Allah is my witness." My girlfriend nearly spit out her yogurt drink. Even her younger sister, the angel of the family, burst out laughing. Zeynep tried to recover, stammering excuses, but it was over. I had won. Fatma grabbed the plate of raw meat and dumped it over her daughter's head. "What kind of daughter are you? Shameless!" she yelled, before getting up to hug me and apologize, calling me my son for the first time. On the drive home, I almost crashed, because me and Aisha couldn't stop laughing about how crazy the whole thing had been. And I didn't know it at the time, but her sister was still upset about Aisha marrying a foreigner, and it wasn't long before she turned my entire life upside down. 2 weeks after the raw meat incident, things seemed to have calmed down at Aisha's family home. Fatma had started treating me like her own son, always packing extra food for me to take home, and texting Aisha to make sure I was eating properly. Even the cousins who used to eye me suspiciously now greeted me warmly at family gatherings, but Zeynep had gone eerily quiet, avoiding